Tom Carter called his wife from the shoulder of Interstate 90 at 3:47 in the morning with freezing rain rattling against the cab so hard it sounded like handfuls of gravel. He was 62 years old, almost 40 straight years hauling freight coast to coast, clean logbooks, paid taxes every single year, never missed a delivery unless weather shut the highway down itself. And the Social Security statement glowing on the cracked tablet beside his thermos said he only had 14 credits. I sat behind that desk for 28 years, and I need you to understand something right away. Men like Tom walked into offices like mine all the time believing one simple thing. If you worked hard, stayed honest, and kept your head down, the system would eventually take care of you. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it absolutely does not. I remember one driver in particular, hands shaking, still smelling like diesel fuel and wet gloves, trying to smooth out old tax papers across my desk because he thought maybe the machine had made some kind of mistake. Honestly, it still bothers me how often I saw that look. That night, Tom had the engine idling low because if he shut it off completely in that weather, there was a chance it would not start again. Wipers scraping slow across the windshield. Half-drunk, cold coffee sitting in the cup holder. Pen clipped to the edge of his paper logbook out of habit, even though most companies had gone electronic years ago. He tapped the tablet screen 3 times with the side of his thumb because the rain had made his fingers stiff. 14 credits, not 40, not even close. His wife Elena answered on the 4th ring, sounding half asleep. He did not say hello first. He just breathed into the phone for a second while trucks hissed past him in the dark. Then he said the number again, like maybe saying it slower would somehow fix it.
14 credits, Lena. I drove my whole damn life. How do I only got 14?
There was a long silence after that. Not dramatic, just tired. Real tired. You could hear him rubbing his forehead, hear the seat springs creak when he leaned forward. One of those little sounds people make when their body suddenly feels older than it did an hour ago. Elena asked if maybe he opened the wrong page. Tom laughed then, short, dry. Not because anything was funny, that nervous kind of laugh people make when fear starts pushing into the room. He wiped condensation off the inside of the windshield with his sleeve and opened the earnings record again. The cab light threw this weak yellow glow over everything. Receipts jammed into the side pocket. Fingerprints on the tablet screen. Fast food napkins stuffed near the shifter. Now listen, most people do not even check their earnings record until retirement is breathing down their neck. They trust payroll. If a company handed you a W-2 and taxes came out of the check, you figured somebody smarter than you already handled the paperwork. They trust dispatch companies. They trust subcontractors. Especially truck drivers from Tom's generation, because a lot of them bounced between employee work, lease contracts, cash hauls back in the older days. Different states, different small carriers that disappeared 20 years ago. And paperwork gets lost, or never filed right to begin with. Tom started listing years out loud to Elena while flipping through old memory like he was checking delivery routes. 1994, Kansas City route. 2001, refrigerated loads out of Toledo. 2008, that brutal year. Fuel prices nearly buried him. He remembered every load, every breakdown. Every Christmas he missed sleeping in truck stops while other people opened presents at home. But the earnings record did not care about memory. The earnings record cared about reporting. And honestly, people from Tom's generation did not spend nights logging into government websites checking retirement records. Most of them barely wanted to reset a password. Rainwater leaked from the top corner of the driver's side door and dripped onto one of the papers in his seat. Tom cursed under his breath and shoved the stack farther over near the cooler. The thing people misunderstand about Social Security credits is that you can think of them as the basic building blocks for your retirement. In 2026, you earn 1 credit for every certain amount of covered earnings, up to 4 credits a year. But if income was reported wrong, or self-employment taxes were never properly paid, or someone classified you incorrectly for years, the record can look catastrophically incomplete. Tom had spent decades assuming somebody else handled it correctly. That assumption sat in the cab with him, heavier than the rain. About 20 minutes into that phone call, Elena asked the question he had been avoiding. Did he keep old tax returns? There was another silence then. Longer this time. He reached behind the passenger seat where he kept an old black duffel bag full of folded paperwork he carried for no real reason other than habit. Drivers do that sometimes. Little mobile archives of their lives. Fuel receipts, permit copies. Tax envelopes folded so many times they barely open without tearing. He unzipped the bag. Paper smell. Diesel smell. Cold air leaking through the door seals. He started spreading returns across the passenger seat one by one while the engine hummed underneath him. 2004, 2007, 2012. Some stained with coffee rings. One with grease fingerprints clear across the top. His pen started scratching against the edge of the logbook as he wrote years down manually. Employee, contract, employee, missing, 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 and I will be straight with you. This is where shame starts crawling in for men like Tom, because blue-collar guys who pride themselves on surviving everything alone do not like discovering paperwork might beat them after they survived bad roads, layoffs, bad backs, and 40 winters behind a windshield. About an hour into the call, Elena quietly asked him if they were going to lose the house. Tom did not answer immediately. A truck blasted past the shoulder hard enough to shake the whole cab. He just stared at the numbers. 14 credits. Then years where taxes looked incomplete. Then entire stretches where employers had changed ownership 3 times since the 90s. He pressed both palms against his eyes like he could physically hold himself together. I saw this more times than I'm comfortable admitting. That exact moment where the tough guy mask cracks quietly with nobody around except the hum of an engine and someone who loves him on the other end of a bad phone connection. Tom finally told Elena he would figure it out in the morning. But he did not sleep. He kept working right there in the cab, matching years, writing employer names, pulling receipts from envelopes, squinting at faded ink under the weak dome light. Around 5:15, he found the first real clue. One company from the late 90s had issued him contractor forms during years he swore taxes were withheld, like regular payroll. He checked another return, then another. His breathing changed. Faster now. Pen scratching harder across the page. The rain slowed outside, but the windshield still clicked under freezing sleet. And that was the moment Tom realized the problem might not be one missing year. It might be decades. So let me ask you something. If you opened your earnings record tonight and found out half your working life was missing, would you even know where to start? Tom called in sick the next day for the first time in almost 11 years. That detail stuck with me because drivers do not do that lightly, especially old-school long-haul guys who think pain is just part of the job description. He parked the rig behind a truck stop outside Erie while freezing slush slid down the windows in crooked gray streaks. Engine still idling low. Same cold coffee sitting there from hours earlier. He had not even changed shirts. Diesel smell soaked into the flannel around his wrists. Elena kept calling every couple hours asking if he ate anything. Mostly he lied and said yes. Truth was he spent nearly 8 straight hours inside that cab, turning his whole working life into piles across the passenger seat. Tax returns on one side, pay stubs on another. Receipts shoved near the dashboard vents to dry because some had gotten wet. He used the same habit he built from decades keeping logbooks accurate, line by line, year by year, route by route. Slow, careful, almost stubborn. That became his bridge. Not panic, not luck, discipline. I remember when Tom later told me about that second night. He said the cab felt smaller every hour, like the walls were pushing inward while numbers kept refusing to add up. He found years where self-employment taxes had only been partially paid because an accountant rushed paperwork. Years where small carriers folded before reporting was corrected. One year where earnings showed completely blank, even though he remembered hauling steel through Ohio during a blizzard, bad enough to shut down half the state. He still remembered the motel receipt from that run. Could not remember his daughter's piano recital from the same month. That part hit him hard.
I missed half my family's life thinking I was protecting them.
He said it quietly while rubbing the heel of his hand against his eyes. No big speech, just exhaustion. And honestly, those are usually the moments I remember most. Not yelling, not anger, just regular people realizing sacrifice and protection are not always the same thing. Here's the part most people miss. Tom actually tried to ignore the situation for almost 2 days after discovering it. Kept telling himself maybe Social Security records were delayed. Maybe the website glitched. Maybe somebody at the office would magically fix it with one phone call. Human beings do that, especially proud men. He drove another short freight run into Pennsylvania while papers slid around the cab every time he braked. At one red light, he accidentally knocked a stack of receipts onto the dirty floor mat and just stared at them there without picking them up for almost a minute. That kind of defeated silence worries me more than panic sometimes. By the third night, he finally called the Social Security office. Bad connection, long hold music, rain ticking against the windshield again, while he sat gripping the phone hard enough his knuckles turned pale. The representative explained he needed proof for disputed earnings, years, tax records, employer documentation, anything showing covered income. Tom wrote every instruction down in the margins of his old paper logbook, even though the page still had mileage notes from a delivery earlier that week. I can picture it perfectly because I saw versions of that notebook hundreds of times. Smudged ink, coffee stains, tiny, cramped handwriting from men trying desperately not to lose control of the math. He started assembling packets right there in the truck cab. One of the packets got mailed back 2 weeks later because he wrote the wrong zip code while filling everything out half asleep in the cab. Tom stared at that returned envelope for almost a full minute before opening it. One envelope per disputed year: 2003, 2004, 2008. He paper-clipped receipts together with frozen fingers because the heater blower had started acting up and the cab kept going cold every 20 minutes. At one point, he made a calculation wrong and thought he was still short several credits. He stared at the numbers, counted again, still wrong. Then he realized he skipped an entire tax year sitting underneath the passenger seat beside an old flashlight. He laughed again. Same nervous laugh from before, only this time it broke halfway through.
I thought I did everything right. I really believed hard work was enough.
That sentence stayed with me, because that belief built half this country. And sometimes that exact belief leaves people dangerously unprepared when paperwork fails them. Tom eventually mailed the first correction packets from a truck stop post office near Buffalo. Snow piled black and gray around the loading docks. His hands shook signing the certified mail slips because by then he understood something deeply uncomfortable. This was not going to fix itself quickly. Months, maybe longer. And I wish I could tell you every story like this ends perfectly, that every missing earnings year gets restored clean and simple. But that would not be honest. Some employers are gone forever. Some records disappear. Some people wait too long. Tom knew that too. You could hear it in his voice during the late-night calls he later made to me after getting my number through a regional office worker. He kept asking the same question in different ways. How much time did he really have left to repair the damage? That question followed him mile after mile while he drove through. Freezing rain with folders stacked beside him like fragile cargo. And by the time the first corrected earnings estimate finally appeared, weeks later, Tom realized the number still was not enough for the retirement he thought 40 years bought him. So, what do you do when you finally uncover the truth? And it still is not enough. Tom called me just after sunset from a rest stop outside Toledo. I remember that because I was reheating soup in the microwave and almost let the call go to voicemail. His voice sounded worn thin, not dramatic, just scraped down by too many nights staring at numbers inside that truck cab. The engine idled low in the background the whole conversation. You could hear windshield wipers dragging slow across glass every few seconds. He told me he had finally gotten several missing earnings, years corrected, but the updated estimate still sat far below what he expected after 4 decades on the road. I sat behind that desk for 28 years, and this is where a lot of people emotionally collapse. They survived the discovery phase. They survived the paperwork fight. Then reality lands anyway, because recovering missing credits does not automatically create a comfortable retirement. Tom had gone into this believing there would be a finish line where someone handed him certainty. Instead, he got more math, more waiting, more choices. He told me he had parked behind the truck stop diner with tax folders spread across the passenger seat again. Same black duffel bag, same cracked tablet, cold coffee in the cup holder because he kept forgetting to drink it while recalculating benefit estimates. The cab light flickered every few minutes from a loose wire above the driver's seat. He said it was driving him crazy. Honestly, that detail felt perfect for where his head was. Nothing steady anymore. Nothing simple. He started reading numbers to me while flipping pages. Revised earnings. Estimated benefit at 62. Estimated benefit at full retirement age. Then the projected amount at 70 after delayed retirement credits, which is just the system's way of paying you a little extra every month for waiting. His pen scratched so hard into the logbook paper I could hear it through the phone. I asked him one question. Could he realistically keep driving a few more years? Long silence. Air brakes hissing outside somewhere. Then he admitted his back hurt every morning now climbing down from the cab. Said some nights his right hand cramped so bad he struggled holding a coffee cup after long winter runs. But he also admitted something else. He was terrified of becoming dependent on his kids. That fear sat underneath everything. Not poverty alone, dependence. Tom started reorganizing the paperwork again while we talked. He lined up years across the seat exactly like freight manifests. Careful little stacks. Corrected earnings on one side. Missing documentation still unresolved on the other. That was his ritual now. Every hard truth happened inside that cab. Every decision, too. I remember him muttering dates under his breath while calculator numbers glowed across the tablet screen. 2011, 2014, 2019. Then he stopped talking completely. I heard him exhale hard through his nose.
I can't quit now. Not after dragging my family this far.
There it was. Not optimism. Resolve. Road-beaten resolve. And there is a difference. We started building what I call a bridge strategy. Practical. Unromantic. The kind ordinary people actually use. Tom delayed claiming benefits early. That mattered because every year he waited beyond full retirement. Age increased the monthly amount. He kept taking selective freight runs instead of the brutal cross-country schedules he used to run in his 40s. Shorter regional hauls, fewer overnight pushes, less damage to his body. But there was another problem. Debt. Not catastrophic debt. regular American debt, mortgage balance, truck repairs from years earlier, credit cards from helping one of his sons through a layoff during the pandemic years. And I'll be straight with you. These are the details people hide out of embarrassment, even though almost everybody around our age carries some version of them. Tom had spent years acting like he was fine, because he thought responsibility meant silence. One night he called me while parked near a warehouse outside Akron, rain tapping the roof again. That weather followed the whole story like a bad memory. He had spread monthly expenses across the steering wheel, with a yellow legal pad balanced against it. He read numbers out loud: insurance, fuel, house payment, medication costs for Elena's arthritis. Then he suddenly stopped. I thought the call dropped. Instead, I heard paper crumpling in his fist. He had accidentally grabbed one of his daughter's old school drawings tucked inside the folder. Little stick figure truck beside a house, probably 20 years old. He laughed once under his breath, then nothing. That silence lasted maybe 10 seconds. Felt much longer. I saw this. More times than I'm comfortable admitting. Tough men breaking quietly over tiny things they did not expect. Not the giant crisis itself. The little reminder of how fast a working life disappears. Tom eventually flattened the paperback out against the steering wheel with both palms. Then he kept calculating. That mattered. Because the breakthrough was not emotional inspiration. It was consistency. Same discipline that kept deliveries on time for almost 40 years now turned toward protecting his own future. He started checking his earnings record every few months instead of assuming everything was fine. Started documenting every contract carefully. Started putting specific money aside from each regional run instead of relying on leftover cash at the end of the month. The first time he told me, he skipped buying extra chrome parts for the truck because the money needed to go into savings instead. He sounded embarrassed admitting it. Blue-collar pride works like that sometimes. People will sacrifice retirement before sacrificing appearances. But slowly, things stabilized. Not magically, gradually. Corrected earnings raised his projected benefit. Delayed retirement credits increased it further. Smaller debt balances lowered pressure month by month. Elena picked up part-time bookkeeping work from home during tax season. Not because they dreamed of hustling forever, because they finally started planning together instead of silently carrying fear alone. And honestly, that partnership probably saved them as much as the paperwork did. About 8 months after the first freezing rain phone call, Tom parked the truck beside Lake Erie before dawn and opened the updated estimate again. Same cracked tablet. Same smell of diesel in the cab. Same old logbook open across his lap. Only this time his hands were steadier. Not calm exactly. Still wary, but steadier. He read the projected monthly number twice before speaking. Then he took the pen and wrote one sentence across the top corner of the logbook page. Not mileage, not dispatch notes, just one sentence.
I finally started driving for my own future.
He told me later the words surprised him a little when he wrote them, because for most of his life the truck existed for everybody else. Companies, bills, family emergencies, deadlines, other people's freight. Never him. There is this fantasy people have that solving a Social Security problem creates peace. Real peace. Clean ending. Deep breath. Roll credits. Usually it does not work like that. Tom still checked the earnings record constantly after that. Still carried folders in the cab. Still kept certified mail receipts clipped together in plastic sleeves. Sometimes he woke up worried another mistake would appear somewhere he had not looked yet. That lingering wariness never fully left. And maybe it shouldn't have, because vigilance became part of survival. A year later, he reduced his driving schedule again. mostly regional freight by then. Home more weekends, less overnight ice runs through mountain states. He and Elena finally sat down with an actual retirement timeline written across yellow notebook paper at the kitchen table, instead of avoiding the conversation completely. Not luxury, not fantasy, stability. That was the victory. I remember our final long phone call. Tom was sitting inside the parked truck outside Cleveland, watching sleet slide sideways across the windshield. Same sound of the idling engine underneath everything. He told me he still opened the logbook sometimes and felt angry at himself for not checking sooner. Then he said something honest that stuck with me. He said the pages felt heavier now, not physically, emotionally, because every line reminded him how close he came to discovering the truth too late. Then he went quiet for several seconds before speaking again.
I'm not done yet, but I don't trust autopilot anymore.
This story shows how meticulous year-by-year tracking helped Tom Carter get out from under decades of missing reported earnings and strengthen his Social Security benefits. I keep thinking about that truck cab, rain tapping the windshield, papers sliding off the passenger seat, Tom smoothing out old tax returns with diesel-stained hands, while the heater clicked on and off beside him. At first he wanted to avoid the whole thing. Then came the shame. Then the anger at himself. But eventually that same stubborn discipline he used hauling freight across the country became the thing that pulled him forward, instead of burying him. Here's what I've learned after all these years sitting across from people like Tom. Hard work alone is not a retirement strategy. I wish it were. A lot of decent people wish it were. The biggest thing I want you to take away from Tom Carter's story is that records matter more than memory. Tom could remember snowstorms from 20 years ago better than birthday parties, but none of that counted until paperwork backed it up. I've sat across enough kitchen tables to know pride causes more delays than confusion does. People wait because checking feels scary. Then one missing year turns into 10. And I'll be straight with you. Not everyone fixes it in time. Some people discover missing earnings too late to reconstruct the proof. That's the uncomfortable truth nobody likes talking about. But I also learned this. Consistent small actions beat panic almost every time. Tom did not solve this through brilliance. He solved it through stubborn repetition inside that truck cab night after night. 1. Tonight, log into your Social Security account and check your earnings record year by year. Do not skim it. Sit somewhere quiet the same way Tom sat inside that idling cab and physically write down any missing or suspicious years on paper. 2. Pull out old tax returns even if they are stuffed in boxes, garages, glove compartments, or folded inside envelopes. Open them carefully. Some of Tom's receipts nearly tore apart because they had been folded for decades. 3. If you worked contract jobs, trucking routes, construction, cash-heavy work, or multiple employers over the years, compare every reported earnings year against your own memory and paperwork, especially years after layoffs, ownership changes, or self-employment periods. 4. Create one folder for each disputed year, exactly the way Tom separated paperwork across the passenger seat. Do not throw everything together. 1 year, 1 packet, 1 timeline. 5. If your body is already wearing down from physical labor, run actual retirement estimates at different claiming ages before making emotional decisions. Tom changed his entire driving schedule after seeing the long-term difference delaying benefits could make. 6. Have the uncomfortable conversation with your spouse or family now, instead of carrying silent fear alone. Tom spent years trying to protect Elena by staying quiet, and it nearly isolated him completely. 7. Recheck your earnings. Record regularly going forward. Not once. Regularly. Tom never trusted autopilot again after discovering decades of mistakes hiding in plain sight. If you're somewhere between 45 and 65 and this story hit close to home, drop "I'm in the comments. I read them, and I try to answer as many as I can. We can figure out your situation together. This is the story of one ordinary person who figured out their situation. This is not personal advice and not a guarantee. Social Security rules are complex and depend on your age, earnings record, credits, health, family situation, and possible changes in law. What worked here will not work for everyone. Always consult a qualified Social Security professional or your local office before making any decisions. Don't risk your family's future relying solely on someone else's experience.